I don't know about you, but I'm sick of it. We're talking, texting, blogging, tweeting, and replying more than ever, but our actual communication, it's never been worse. And it's wrecking our communities, our organizations, our families, ourselves. And I'm not talking about you, I'm talking about what I'm noticing in myself. Whether it's religion, politics, gun laws, vaccinations, keto versus carb, it doesn't matter. Practically any topic, we're all talking, but we've lost our ability to communicate. So here's the deal. This video wasn't even on our YouTube coaching channel release schedule. I just woke up this morning and thought, there's got to be something I can do. So I made up a new word, jotted down a few things to hopefully get you thinking in a new way. Hit the record button, and let's see what happens. For those of you who have no idea who I am, I'm Dr. Bradford Cooper of the Catalyst Coaching Institute, where our goal is to help people be a catalyst for a world that very much needs us right now. But if we're not even communicating, is it possible to be a catalyst? Not a chance. So I'm hopeful that something in the next few minutes will move the dial just a little. First, a few things to consider. Our adult kids will tell you they have heard me say you become the 5 people with whom you spend the most time their entire lives. And it's true. Choosing the right 5 people are key to our success, long and short term. But recently I've been waking up to the importance of the next 5 to 10 people. Are they simply mirror images of the first 5? Or do they bring a completely different perspective about politics, religion, and life into my world? Next, what percentage of my weekly interactions are with people who generally agree with me? There's something called discordant interaction budget, which references this. In a nutshell, it's the percentage of time that we budget for interacting with those with whom we're out of harmony. We don't want that number to be at the top of the scale. That's exhausting. But similarly, if it's at the bottom, then we're essentially hiding in our caves and, well, we're certainly not expanding our perspectives or growing personally. A willingness and desire to communicate, not simply create our own echo chamber of personal algorithms for our interactions that are happening are great first steps. But then what? How do we make the most of those interactions once we expand the scope of them? Well, let's start by tuning into some of our cognitive biases. Now, there are over 100 cognitive biases, but let's talk through 7 of the big ones, and they all happen to start with C, so maybe they'll make it a little bit easier. For each of these, consider ranking your own awareness on a 1 to 10 scale, with 1 being, I had no idea that was a potential bias, and 10 being, yep, I'm very aware of that bias in my life. Now, this might hit some tender nerves, so if you're ready, let's dig in. Number 1 is confirmation bias. The brain welcomes what it already thinks and resists what contradicts or disturbs what it thinks. So what is that? 1 to 10. Completely tuned in? Or know it exists but ignore it when you're talking to other people. Number 2, complexity bias. We prefer simple lies to complex truth. Number 3, community or conformity bias. We're swayed by others in my group first and foremost. Number 4, complementary bias. We're open to people who are nice to us. Contact bias. If we have limited personal contact with someone, like over Twitter, we're less likely to see what they see. Number 6, comfort, complacency, or convenience bias. And this is closely related to cache bias. Our brains welcome data that allows us to relax and be happy, and rejects data that requires us to adjust, work, be inconvenienced, or affects how we make a living. And finally, 7, confidence bias. We mistake confidence for competence, and we're vulnerable to the lies of a confident person. Our brains prefer a confident lie to a hesitant truth. So how'd it go? When it comes to communicating, I definitely don't have it figured out. But I've found that simply being aware of these, the depth and effectiveness of my communication with others changes significantly. Now, I've got a long way to go, but it's a noticeable difference. The problem is our biases are so ingrained that we have to constantly bring them to the surface. In much the same way as someone at an AA meeting will start off by saying, my name is blank and I'm an alcoholic, I must essentially start every single discussion by saying, my name is Brad and I have a multitude of cognitive biases. So what's the action plan? This is an immense issue and a brief video is not going to solve it, but maybe, just maybe, we can make a dent. With that in mind, here are 3 steps that I'm trying that maybe you want to consider going forward as well. Number 1, consider my circle of influence. Is everyone I'm around a mirror image of me? Or am I being purposeful about reading books, listening to podcasts, and interacting with others who see the world very differently than I do. Number two, then as we do interact with a broader sphere of people and perspectives, tune in specifically to one of the biases I mentioned earlier that maybe hit home. Bring your awareness of that bias into each of those interactions until the impact of it begins to fade. Be patient. In fact, I've found that verbalizing it, literally verbalizing it in my interactions, as in, I don't agree with what you're saying, but that could simply be because I've always believed differently for so long. I'd love to hear more about why you feel that way. You see, it doesn't just enhance my awareness, it often opens up the other person about their own potential biases. 3, my new word that I promised, reflection. Now, not reflection, it's reflection, spelled with an X. The idea is that we cannot control our reflex. When the doctor taps the patellar tendon beneath your knee, you have a reflex. Same thing when we see a social media post or hear a comment from someone. We have an auto response, a reflex. It's what comes next where the magic can occur if we choose. Rather than rolling with the reflex, we pause to reflect on that reflex. Why did that comment bother me? Do I have an inherent bias that might have caused that to be my immediate response? Is there a different way of thinking about this that maybe I haven't considered? Do you see the difference? The reflex is natural. The reflection takes us to a higher plane of communication. It's that microsecond between stimulus and response that makes us who we are, that allows us to be a catalyst and to make a positive difference by going beyond reflex to reflection. Thanks for tuning in. I hope something here helped make our world just a little bit better.